Hello and welcome to a getting started tutorial in using the Bridget software. So the first thing you're going to want to do once the software is installed is initialize some of the practice-wide settings. Now you can do that by going to the File area in the top left-hand corner and selecting Practice Settings. So the first thing to do is to set up the practice address details. Now you'll see there is a site already in here, and if you just double click on that site, it will allow us to edit the details that are below it. That's our practice name, our address and things like that. So if I just double click there, I can give my site name any name I want. We put in the practice name and then the address details underneath. We can also fill in our telephone, fax number, practice-wide email address and the owner. And these details are important because if we're not using a bespoke logo on our documentation, then it will automatically use these address details on any invoices, treatment plans, basically anything that we print from the program will have this address on it. Next thing to do is to set up the working hours for the practice. So these are just the default hours that your practice actually will be using. Now when you come to set up your individual staff members, you can override them individually, but just as a starting point you might want to just put in the practice working days and the start and end times, lunch breaks, default lunch breaks for each day of the practice. And then when you go to create the working hours for each individual staff member, it will take these times that you've set up in here as the default and then allow you to change them for each individual staff member. Under the Documents tab, you can choose the order of preference when you're sending out your correspondence. So in order to do that, we can either tick or untick something as to whether we want to send it or not. So in this case I'm saying that I would like to send an email first, and I have that ticked, an SMS next. That's if they don't have an email, it will send an SMS, and if they don't have either, then I will send a letter. It may be that we're trying to go completely paperless, in which case we can untick whatever we don't want to send, such as the letter, and then it will only send an email or an SMS. But notice if I just highlight one of these particular methods of contact and then move up or down, then I can move my SMS to the top and the email will be second. So I'm just basically putting in my order of preference in communicating with my patients. Also important are the declarations that you might want to have appear on your estimates, your plans, your options and your invoices. So again, you can enter these into this area and then those will automatically appear at the bottom of any of the documents that you're creating. So estimates and plans will have this declaration, your option declaration will have whatever you put in here, and your invoice will have whatever declaration you put into here. Now there are various other things that you might want to enter into the practice settings. If you're an NHS practice, for example, you will need to make sure that you have entered the correct details into the NHS authorization section. So you'll be able to get your site number from the NHS BSA, your contract number, your location number. The claim reference will normally be starting at 1 if you're starting from scratch. The NHS region, whether you want to allow orthodontic claims at your practice, and you'll also be given a long username and password for interfacing to the Compass system, and the NHS charges can be found at the bottom here. But you can get all of these details from your Compass system and then enter that information into Bridget so that the interface will be complete between the two, and you can automate the sending of your FP17s. If you have an email set up, you can also enter your email server details into the email area, and again that will allow you to send information directly from Bridget as an email, such as plans, appointment reminders, recalls, and that will go straight out of Bridget using these mail details to your patients. SMS, you can purchase credits at any time by clicking on the SMS tab and selecting purchase credits. And then the only other thing really is the miscellaneous tab. There are various things in here. They should automatically be set when we initialize a new practice, so you shouldn't need to change much in here. One thing that I would make sure that you have turned on is the autosave patient record every 5 minutes. That would just make sure that if there's a problem, if your computer crashes or there's some sort of power cut, then you can make sure that the system has auto-saved your patient record every 5 minutes, so you'll only lose a maximum of 5 minutes of data entry if you have that turned on. Something else, if you're not on the cloud-based system, obviously if you're on the cloud we'll do your backups for you, but if you have it installed at your practice, then you might want to just tick the display backup warning on exiting program, and that will allow a warning to appear whenever you exit from the program. If you haven't taken a backup in a number of days, then it will just offer you that warning to remind you to take that backup. So this is a good starting place for setting up your practice. So File, Practice Setup in the top left hand corner. The next thing you'll want to do is specify the individual staff members that are working at your practice. And in here we can add, edit any staff members that we want to have working at the practice. Now initially you'll just have the one. It will be an administrator, and the first name will be admin, last name admin. So you'll want to edit that and just change those settings to whoever is going to be your administrator. And you can make as many people as you want administrators and add as many staff members as you want to the program. To add a new staff member, just simply select Add New Staff Member on the left hand side. This will allow us to enter their title, their first name, last name, we can also enter their address details if we want to, although those aren't really used anywhere in the program, whether the staff member is active or not. If we click on the Staff tab, that will then allow us to enter their professional title, their qualifications, their GDC number. The very important fields that we need here are the provider type, so whether they are a dentist, hygienist or any of these other provider types. If they are a receptionist and will mainly be doing reception work, then simply select Other. In this case, let's enter a dentist. And if we're an NHS practice, we can add in multiple contract numbers for this particular staff member as well. We can do that by clicking on the yellow folder. And we can also enter a performer number, and whether we want this person to be able to update dental recalls or update hygiene recalls. So this is important when we are editing a patient record and we save and close the patient record. It will allow us then, if we're a dentist, to update that patient recall date to another 6 months time or whatever date range we choose. We can also send notification tags. You ought to put that in. That's so that we can send notification tags down to reception as a dentist. And whether we can receive notification tags, you'll want to turn that off if you're a dentist, because you will not be handling the reception side of things. So if you're a receptionist, turn off Can Send Notification Tags and turn on Can Receive Notification Tags. If you're a provider, make sure that you've got Can Send Notification Tags and turn off Can Receive Notification Tags. Do we want them to be listed in the appointment diary so we can make appointments with them? In this case the answer is yes, so we'll leave that ticked. And whether they can receive patient SMS responses. Again, normally as a dentist you wouldn't have that ticked. That would normally be something that a receptionist would handle. Underneath you can see this is where we can specify the individual working days and hours of each of the providers. So if these are the defaults that we put into our practice settings, but if this particular provider doesn't work on a Tuesday, then we can just untick that. Doesn't work on a Thursday and just works those 3 days, and then we can just edit what times the dentist is going to be available from and to in the diary, and their lunch break if they have one. Under the Access tab, you'll need to put in a unique username. This is the login details of this particular provider. So in this case, we called this person Sam, so I'm just going to make his username Sam, and the password, just in this case, I'm going to make Sam. You might want to make it something more complicated. You can also get them to change their password either on a weekly basis or a monthly basis or over a yearly basis, whatever you choose, or you may choose not to force them to update their password over any given period. Also important is setting up the security group access. We haven't covered that yet, but basically you can set up security groups in the program, and each of those security groups can perform certain actions within the software. Now, the default security group is administrator. An administrator can do anything in the program, but a user must be allocated to a particular security group, otherwise they'll be able to do nothing in the program. So in this case, I'm assigning them to an administrator. You can see I've also set up, though, a user security group, and that gives them limited access to the program's functionality. We also have an auto log-off feature and an auto exit feature from the program. So if the provider leaves the program unattended for any given period, we can tell it to log off after a certain period of time, or even exit from the program. So that would mean that the provider would then need to log back into the program in order to continue using it. So it's just a security safeguard if they leave their terminal for any given period of time. Consent warnings allows a consent warning whenever you open up a patient record to appear, just notifying you as to whether you have consent from that patient to either send emails or SMSs or letters to them. And then under the miscellaneous, depending on whether you have the DEPA module, you'll see a DEPA username and password that you can enter here, which will allow Bridget to interface to the Denplan DEPA system. And you can also, if you have an image for your provider's signature, you can add that as a BMP file or a TIFF or a PNG directly into this area, and that can be used on documentation. So if you have certain letters or documents that need a provider signature, then if you put that provider signature into here, it will automatically import that signature onto the document for you. So there you go, we've now set up our staff member in our database. Now if we go to the appointment diary, you'll see that Sam O'Connor is somebody that I can now book an appointment with as a dentist. So we've set up our practice settings. The next thing is we've gone into our staff members and we've added whatever staff members we need to in the system. Next, you'll want to set up your treatment database. So there will be a list of treatments already in the system. Many of these your practice will use and many your practice won't use. So you may need to go through each of these treatments, and if you find that you're not using a particular treatment, then just click on the treatment and select delete treatment from the database. However, if you are using those treatments, you will still need to go through the database just to put in things like the colours that you might want to use when you're adding a treatment to a patient. You will also, of course, need to update the prices for the treatments that you're going to be administering if they're private treatments. To edit a treatment, you can either highlight it and select Edit Treatment on the left, or more simply you can just double click the treatment in the chart. This will allow us to fully configure our treatment. So there is nothing hard coded in the system. We can change the code to whatever we want to make it more meaningful to us. We can put in whatever description we want for our treatment and make it again meaningful to us. We can set up a whole load of treatment categories by using the yellow folder next to the treatment category box, and then add this particular treatment to the treatment category that we've created. So in this case, you can see we've added it to our base charting treatment categories, but we've also got one that is called fillings, and I've added this treatment to my fillings category. What kind of graphic is going to be used when administering this treatment? Well, we have this one set to a tooth surface, so this will allow us to choose each individual surface that this particular treatment applies to. However, if we're doing other kinds of treatments, an examination, for example, would be a general graphic, i.e. that does not appear on the actual chart. It is simply a textual recording. A tooth surface allows us, as we said, to choose each individual surface. If we're doing a crown, then we would want to administer a whole tooth, so that will cover the whole crown of the tooth. If it's a root filling, we would want to choose tooth root, a bridge, a range treatment, whether it's an extraction, an implant. You can see all these different graphics are completely user definable, and we define how we want to show this treatment on our chart. The treatment color, again, completely configurable by you, so choose what you want there. The other thing you'll definitely need to go through, obviously there are other functions that we could go through, but I don't intend to go through those now, but if you set up your different descriptions and the graphics and the treatment colors, the other thing you'll need to do, of course, is go to the Prices tab, and we can see that for our particular pricing, let's do this by surface, and we're able to specify the pricing structure that we want for our treatment. Now, because we're pricing by surface, this means that we will charge in our price 1 column. You can have up to 3 different prices for any particular treatment, or more if you would like it, using the price schedule facility. But in this case, we're saying, well, if we're covering one surface for this treatment, we're going to charge £82.50. For 2 surfaces, £104.25. For 3 surfaces, £127.50, etc. So the program, as you chart this particular treatment, will automatically calculate the relevant price. So if the patient is on price level 1, this has nothing to do with NHS banding, this is for private treatments. So if we've put our patient on a price level 1, then it will charge this amount for this treatment. It might be that we have an in-house plan which we make price level 2, and if the patient is on price level 2, then it will use these prices instead. And then we can set up a price level 3. So first thing we would want to do is set up our practice settings, then we go to our staff members, and then we'll come to our treatments. If you want to add any additional treatments, of course, just simply use the Add New Treatment functionality on the left hand side and just add whatever treatments we want. Finally, in our Getting Started, we'd want to set up our security groups. So if we click on Security on the left hand side, as I say, normally you would just have an administrator security group. And an administrator, you can see we have the group on the left hand side, and we have all of the tasks that can be done within the program on the right hand side. And if I just open up the administrator security group, I can see all of the things on the right hand side are listed under my administrator security group. So an administrator can do anything in the program. If I want to set up an additional security group, I select Add Group. So you can see I've already done that here and selected a user. And then all I do is I highlight what I want a user to be able to do, and then just drag the task to the group and let go. And that will allow the user then to perform whatever action we've dragged across. We can select multiple ones by holding down the control button. So if I know I want them to access the appointment diary, add appointments, edit appointments, delete appointments, I can just hold down the control button and select multiple tasks, and then again drag it across to our group and let go. I've already added a whole load of things that a user can do under their security group. but there are some key ones that the user cannot access. So again, this is user definable, so decide for yourselves what you want your users to be able to achieve and what they are not permitted to do. And then at the bottom here we can allocate each of our staff members to a particular security group. So Michael Smith and Sam O'Connor, you can see that they're both administrators, they can do everything, but these others I can just select from the drop down which group I want to assign them to. Then when these staff members log in, they will only be able to do what is under the staff member, the security user group. So that's a brief overview of getting started within the Bridget software.